In recent years, cyberpunk is a genre that's been hotter than ever. Its unique aesthetic and futuristic setting has won over many fans across all forms of entertainment media. Cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction that features advanced science and technology in an urban dystopian future. Perhaps some of the genre's most noteworthy achievements reside in anime. Cyberpunk anime has influenced cinema on a global scale and acted as a major force in popularizing anime in the West. In this video, I'd like to discuss some of the ways cyberpunk anime has evolved over the years by analyzing two key works. Akira, often regarded as the starting point for the cyberpunk anime subgenre, and Psycho-Pass, a newer work and a personal favorite. Let's begin by first addressing Akira, a pivotal film in cyberpunk history. 4 decades after a catastrophic explosion consumes Tokyo, Akira follows the story of Kaneda and Tetsuo in the newly rebuilt Neo-Tokyo, a dangerous city where biker gangs stain the streets in blood and civil unrest brings about violent riots. After an encounter with a runaway government test subject, Tetsuo awakens supernatural powers, enabling him to vent his insecurities in the form of psychic blasts. Turning his back against his friends, he goes in search of Akira, the psychic responsible for Tokyo's destruction. With its lifelike animation, attention to detail, and memorable scenes, it's no wonder Akira came to be such a global success, even becoming the inspiration for many well-known Western films such as Inception and The Matrix. Not only that, Akira has laid the foundation for many cyberpunk anime to come, as we'll see when we shift gears and fast forward 2 decades to season 1 of the Psycho-Pass anime. In this futuristic version of Japan, society is governed by an all-knowing computer network called the Sibyl system. Thanks to scientific achievement, it's become possible to retrieve a person's profile, their aptitudes, as well as a measure of their likelihood of committing a crime, all through an instantaneous scan of the brain. This data is processed and analyzed to produce what's known as a Psycho-Pass, which the Sibyl system uses to not only assign your job, but also judge your mental state and criminal tendencies. Have a Psycho-Pass too high, and you'll be paralyzed and taken into custody or forced into therapy. With an even higher Psycho-Pass, you'll be terminated on the spot in a most gruesome way. Under this logic, the system is able to stop crime before it even happens. The story follows Tsunemori Akane, a newly hired inspector at the Criminal Investigation Department. She's somewhat like a police officer, except instead of protecting the law, she enforces the Sibyl system's judgment. Other than the fact that you'd have no free will, it seems that life under the Sibyl system is pretty good. As a citizen, you'd be safe no matter where you go.
今は誰かを疑ったり用心したりする心構えは必要なくなった。道端で会う赤の他人は全てサイコパスの保証された安全で善良な人物。その前提でこの社会は成り立っている。
And you're ensured a stable life, so long as you follow the directions.
職業適正交差は個人の能力を最大限に生かし安定した生活を保障します。人間はより人間らしい暮らしへ、芸術と自然、そして平和を誰もが享受できる世界を実現したのです。
So where do things go wrong? It wouldn't be cyberpunk if society were perfect. Well, it turns out that the Sibyl system isn't exactly perfect. We see that some individuals, such as the main villain Makishima Shogo himself, are criminally asymptomatic, meaning they're unjudgeable by the Sibyl system. No matter what malicious acts they're up to, their Psycho-Pass remains in pristine condition.
今からこの女、船原由紀を殺してみせよう。君の目の前で。
犯罪係数48。執行対象ではありません。トリガーをロックします。
This enables Makishima to orchestrate most of the criminal activity throughout the series. And when criminals get their hands on a helmet that stops the Sibyl system from reading their Psycho-Passes, we see horrendous crime being committed out in the open. It's through examples like these that we understand the system is far from perfect and must eventually be replaced, as Akane realizes by the series' end.
人間を甘く見ないことね。
私たちはいつだってより良い社会を目指してる。いつか誰かがこの部屋の電源を落としにやってくるわ。きっと新しい道を見つけてみせる。シビラシステム、あなたたちに未来なんてないのよ。
Despite being produced 24 years later, you can certainly spot the many iconic motifs that Akira has established into the cyberpunk genre. The ominous cityscape shots, the futuristic technology, the hyperviolent imagery, and the societal disarray. What did change with time, however, were the messages they brought. You see, much of today's cyberpunk anime narratives imagine dystopian societies in a perhaps not so different world, and in doing so, serve as sort of a warning of disaster. However, Akira, as well as many Japanese science fiction like it around the 1980s, weren't exactly cues for preventing disaster. Rather, they were more about taking the proper measures after disaster has struck. For example, in Akira, we see that Neo-Tokyo is a failed attempt at restoring the former city, as it is eventually caught in an awkward power struggle. You have the corrupt politicians, violent military, biker gangs, and mentally unstable Tetsuo, all vying for control over the city. This vision of a society that's failed to recover from a large-scale crisis is often seen as a reflection of Japan's post-World War II anxieties. The catastrophic explosion that ravaged Tokyo shown in the beginning parallels the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the mutant government test subjects are reminiscent of nuclear radiation poisoning. Contrast this with the cyberpunk anime narratives of today, and you'll see that there has been a major shift in focus from nuclear war anxieties to problems more relevant to our current time, particularly invasive technology. For example, the dystopian society in Psychopaths isn't a result of disaster mismanagement, but of technological progress. It explores the possible consequences of scientific innovation and how it can lead us down the wrong path. And as we enter an age of surveillance and where personal data is so easily retrievable, Psychopaths' message only becomes more relevant as time goes on. Cyberpunk anime is a thriving medium with no signs of slowing down. As our society continues to evolve and encounter new problems, we can expect cyberpunk to be there, bringing in new perspectives and criticism. That said, I can't wait to see what the next generation of cyberpunk anime has in store for us.